Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Devil Slayer Ministry. I'm your host, Devil Slayer. In this video, I will be going over a book, and for those of you who practice the scriptures just like I do, and for those of you who would like to practice the scriptures as I do, not following me but following God through the scriptures, then Shabbat Shalom. And I'm going to be reading to you the book of Esther, and because today and tomorrow, or the 2 days of Purim. So happy Purim to everybody. Hope everybody's having a great time and a safe time as well during these days. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the book of Esther. I'm going to be reading to you 5 different chapters, and then at that I'll be cutting it off, and then I'm going to be making it a second segment of the second 10 chapters, or the second set of 5 chapters, altogether being 10 chapters. So this is basically why we celebrate Purim, and actually, according to some, even Yeshua himself celebrated Purim when he was walking the earth in human form, and basically God in flesh. So, if y'all are ready, I'm going to go ahead and get ready and get started reading this. So, now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus. This is Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 107 and 20 provinces. That in those days, when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces before him, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the hour of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace, both unto the great and small, 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's palace, where were white, green, and blue hangings fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to the silver rings and pillars of marble. The beds were of gold and silver, upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black and marble. And they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another. There were wine in abundance, according to the state of the king. And the drinking was according to the law. None did compel. For so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house, that they should do according to every man's pleasure. Also Vashti, the queen, made a feast for the women in the royal house which belonged to the king Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mahuman, Bazda, Arbona, Bigtha, and Abbektha, Zathar, Carcass, or Sarsis, or however you pronounce that word, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus, the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look upon, or to look on. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew the law and judgment. And next unto him was Karshina, Shasharth, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Arsina, and Mamukan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which sat at the first in the kingdom, which sat the first in the kingdom. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to the law? Because she hath not performed the king's commandment, or she hath not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains. And Memucan answered before the king and princes, Vashti the queen hath done wrong, or hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to the princes, and to all the people that are in the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes. When it shall be reported, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes, which have heard of the deed of the queen. Thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before the king Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. And when the king's decree, which he shall shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both to great and to small. And the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. For he sent letters unto all the king's provinces, and to every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. After these things, when the wrath of the king Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then the king's servants that ministered unto him, let there be fair young virgins sought out for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather all the fair young virgins and unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Haggai the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so. Now, in Shushan the palace, where there was a certain Jew, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shemaiah, the son of Kish, the son of Benjamin, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem, or in Hebrew, Yerushalayim, with captivity, which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And he brought up Hadassah, that is, Esther, his uncle's daughter. For she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. So it came to pass that when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together in Shushan the palace to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meet to be given her, out of the king's house. And he preferred her and her maids unto the best palace of the house of the women. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did, and what should become of her. Now, when every maid's turn was to come to go in to the king Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of women. For so were the days when their purification accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the women. Thus came every maiden unto the king. Whatsoever she desired was given her, to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Shaashgaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. Now, when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in to the king, she required nothing but what Haggai the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken into the king Ahasuerus and to his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set a royal crown upon her head, and made her queen and stud of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast unto all his provinces and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts, according to the state of the king. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Esther had not yet showed her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Taresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth, and sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther, the queen, and Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when the inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. The king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandments? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then Haman was full of wrath. He thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they have shown him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. in the first month, that is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day. And from month to month to the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. And this is the biblical calendar that I'm actually reading to you as well, that's in the book of Esther. So these are actually the biblical months and not the Gentile months that we all know of. So these are the actual true months, which have no pagan names. And Haman said unto the king Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's laws, therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those who have the charge of the business to bring it into the king's treasuries. Then the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And the king said unto Haman, The silver is given to thee, the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants, and the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province according to the writings thereof, and to every people after their language, in the name of King Ahasuerus was it written, and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given to Shushan, the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, and the city Shushan was perplexed. Well, I'd be perplexed too if I saw writing like that. When Mordecai, chapter 4, when Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes, what it took, and put on sackcloth with ashes, and went out into the midst of the city, and cried out with a loud and bitter cry. And it came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whitherso the king's commandment and his decree came, there was a great mourning among the Jews, fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So Esther's maids and her chamberlain came and told her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Then called Esther for Hathach, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai, to know what it was, and why it was. And to Hathach went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which is before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of all the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. Also he gave him a copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it to Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto them, and to make request before him for her people. And Hathach came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. against Esther spake unto Hathach, and gave him commandment unto Mordecai, and the king's servants, and the people of the king's provinces to know that whosoever, whether the man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out this golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come into the king's these 30 days. And they told Mordecai these words, or they told Mordecai Esther's words. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall there be an enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer, Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way, and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. Chapter 5. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day, that Esther put on her royal apparel, and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. And so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his eyes, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near, and touched the top of the scepter. And the king said unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther, and what is thy request? And it shall be given to thee to half of the kingdom. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. And the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther had said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther, At the banquet of wine, what is thy petition? And it shall be granted unto thee. And what is thy request? Even to half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther, and said, My petition and my request is this: If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do it tomorrow, as the king hath said. And then went Haman forth that day, joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches, and of the multitude of his children, and of all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman said moreover, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared but myself, and tomorrow I invited her unto her also with the king. In other words, he's invited also to her with the king. Yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Then said Zeresh his wife, and all his friends unto him, Let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king, that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go in, then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. It seems like things are getting deep and harsh with this stuff here, but anyways, this is just the first 5 chapters of the book of Esther, and in the next part, we will see what happens. Now, for those of us who actually know the book of Esther, including myself, we already know what happens, but for those who don't know about it, and because of the celebration of Purim, is why I'm reading this. And I will probably actually continue doing this stuff every year, once a year, as this is an annual thing for all of us, a 2-day celebration done once a year. So, for those of you who know about it and whatnot, thank you for tuning in, and thank you for listening to this and for watching it and whatnot. And thank you for the love and support, and until next we meet, love and peace, and lehitrot.